Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the Lotto jackpot. There's Combo 6, where you purchase 6 numbers for only $12. Match any 5 of the 6 Lotto numbers and hit the jackpot. How about Combo 7? That's a purchase of 7 Lotto numbers for $42. Match any 5 of the 7 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3, Combo 8 and Combo 9 Lotto plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Lotto. You have to be in it to win it.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. Only reading is the key, so help them read, learn, grow. Let's show them how much fun it is to read, learn, grow. So parents, you play a part. First and foremost, reading from so young is advantageous. Link with the teachers. Working hand in hand is a must. Just 10 minutes of your child reading to you is a plus. Get fun books, make reading priority. When children read, they are able to learn. And the more they learn, the more they grow. So parents help the kids read, learn, grow. Reading is fun, kids have to know. Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play a part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to www.oecs.org/ELP.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. We are coming to you live, of course, from the studios of VC3 in Kingstown, St. Vincent. My name is Teresa Daniel, and today the talk is about diabetes. As some of you may know, World Diabetes Day was observed on Monday, the 14th of November, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines joined the rest of the world in observing this important day. 1 in every 100 is said to be suffering from diabetes. To talk about this and more this evening, we have the person I like to call our resident expert, Dr. Gerald Thompson, and joining him is Janice Crease Oliver, who is a diabetes educator as well as a representative of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Diabetes and Hypertensive Association. We should have had one other person this evening, but there was a no show. However, the show must go on. Good evening, lady and gentlemen. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Doc, we hear a lot about diabetes, and I know it is a problem here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines from a health standpoint, from an economic standpoint. But I want to set the discussion in context and ask you to explain to us in medical, clinical terms, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about diabetes? What happens to the body when someone has diabetes?
Well, let me start off just a little earlier, Teresa. And you may be hearing about chronic non-communicable disease. Well, the World Health Organization has divided all disease into 3 types. There's either what they consider infectious disease, communicable diseases on one hand, and then on the other hand, injury, whether intentional, such as murder and war, or unintentional, such as falling down or having a road traffic accident. And then in the middle is a list of non-communicable disease, of which the big four are heart disease, that's a heart attack and strokes, or lung disease, which includes asthma, cancer, and diabetes. Now, what we've been finding is that ever since 1960, the prevalence of diabetes has been around 2%. But by 1990, it had grown to 5% and was number 18th on the list of diseases. But by, 2020, 2021, it had grown to be almost 8% of global population, or any population, and it was now number 7th on the list. Not 18th, 7th. And sadly, I want to say in the Caribbean, it is 9%. Now, St. Vincent has a high prevalence of diabetes, but I want to tell you, we're not the highest in the Caribbean. There's several other islands in the Caribbean that's even higher. But in explaining diabetes, I want you to understand that it is a serious disease that doesn't just cause death, but long before death, it can cause a whole series of disabilities and injury. And people's lives get significantly changed long before. And I'm not going into some of the clinical thing, but the rise of diabetes is linked to a lot of different risk factors, different factors that have emerged in our lives. And I'm hoping that in this discussion that we'll be able to talk about them. And so I don't know if Teresa, I should go into the more details about diabetes for you, but let me say that just right behind this area here, the pit of your stomach, there's a gland called the pancreas. Consider it to be the size of, let's say, a Tanya, a little smaller, a size of a big carrot. And what it does, it secretes several types of substances, one of which is called insulin. It also secretes other enzymes to help digest your food, to break down your food. But this insulin is so critical, it's a hormone. And the problem is that this insulin is like a minivan. You need this minivan to pick up the sugar that's gotten into your blood and take it to the different organs of your body. So take it to Georgetown, take it to Mespo, take it to Chateaubriand, and then deliver the person in those areas. In other words, deliver the sugar into the cells. And so the problem with diabetes is just twofold. One, that the ability of the insulin to release the insulin, get it into the cell, there's a resistance to that. In other words, the van has traveled to Georgetown, but the van doors won't open. The van doors are locked. And the sugar can't get out. The people can't get out. The other solution is, guess what? That the pancreas itself just is not producing enough insulin. So imagine a whole set of people in Kingstown, and there are no vans to take them to Chateaubriand, to Mespo, to Georgetown, to Sharps, or to Roseau. And everybody's stuck in town. So in that way, your blood gets higher and higher levels of sugar. Your blood gets sweeter and sweeter and more sugar. And that is the fundamental problem. What happens when your blood gets too sweet, too thick, like syrup? That is what's happening with diabetes.
So you'll talk later about why the blood gets that way, but let's talk more about the different types of diabetes. We know there's type 1, there's also type 2, and pre-diabetes as well. Can you just differentiate these three different stages, please?
It's very important. Now, type 1 diabetes is when, usually earlier in life, some virus or some infection affects the pancreas, and those parts of the pancreas gland that produces the insulin that they are wiped out, they're damaged, so they cannot produce any insulin. There's virtually no insulin being produced. That type 1 diabetic has to receive insulin. Now, a type 2 diabetic is where they're born and their pancreas is producing sufficient insulin. But for those 2 reasons I mentioned to you, usually there becomes a process of insulin resistance. Let me tell you, the insulin resistance is where the insulin has picked up the sugar and has carried it to the cells, the brain, the muscles, everything like that, but it cannot deliver it into those cells. So the cells can't get the glucose to use as energy. So your blood is just full of sugar, and the insulin level initially is high, and this is what we call insulin resistance. What happens after insulin resistance is that your pancreas wants to produce more insulin until it burns out. And just before it burns out, you go into a state called pre-diabetes. And we can test your blood, and we can find out if you are insulin resistant, and we can find out if you're pre-diabetic. Because insulin resistance sometimes takes 10 years. Pre-diabetes takes 3 to 5 years. But when your pancreas becomes fully burnt out and cannot produce sufficient insulin, then that's when your sugar levels in your blood really starts to get high. And when we test your blood, we can do certain tests and find out that the amount of sugar is just too high. And that's when it reaches a certain criteria, which we could talk about, when your blood glucose level is above 6 millimoles per minute or above 120, we say that it is now diabetic. Or if we do something called a hemoglobin A1C, which is something we could talk about too, you find that that is also above 6. And it tells us that you do have diabetes. There are other tests to diagnose diabetes, but that's really what we want. And now, once you're diabetic, we love to be able to pick up somebody before they're full-fledged diabetic. They be pre-diabetes. Or better yet, when they're only insulin resistant. Or better yet, how they can prevent any of these 3 conditions occurring at all, I'm sure is going to be core of this discussion.
Okay. Can any of these stages of diabetes be reversed?
I tell you, if you read most books, they would say that full-fledged diabetes cannot be reversed. It can be. But for sure, insulin resistance, guess what? A big cause of insulin resistance is high blood pressure. 50% of people with high blood pressure, they have insulin resistance. Persons who are obese, the fat on their body soaks up a lot of the insulin, causing insulin resistance. Pesticides, certain pesticide touchdown and some others can also cause insulin resistance. There are a number of things that can produce insulin resistance. So avoiding those things and getting rid of those things, losing weight and all that kind of stuff can help to avert. When pre-diabetes, if you picked up a pre-diabetes, yes, it can be reversed, and we can stop you from going into full-fledged diabetes. And there have been now today cases where people who are diabetic, we feel their insulin, their pancreas isn't producing any insulin. With special diets, we've been able to reverse that and put them back on track, but they have to keep on staying on, so to speak. They have to make sure they stay on to their special diet and so forth, and we can reverse those diabetes where they could even come off of medications and so forth and be controlled with diet. But most people, once they're diabetic, sadly, they're diabetic for a very, very long time, probably until they die.
So diabetes is reversible. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. I took a long time to say that, but I want to say, the effort to make it reversible, that's the thing.
All right. Before we talk about the signs, warning signs, and some of the conditions, let's bring in Chris.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and those who are listening us on the World Wide Web and throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, we are talking about diabetes this afternoon, as Dr. Tamsu mentioned earlier on the type and what actually caused. Now, we are looking at some of these signs and symptoms, and you think about frequent urination, where you can't help it, and every minute you run into the bathroom. You're talking about increased thirst. Your throat is very dry, your mouth is very dry, so you're drinking a lot of water. You're thinking about your skin, is itching you a lot, and you might be wondering, well, for female, you might be thinking that you have a yeast infection. That is the first thing that may come to your mind, but right there and then you might be exhibiting the sign of diabetes. The sugar level is so high that it starts to itch you, and then you have dizziness, you have profuse sweating. All of these things will cause an alarm, and hope that it will awake you that you need to see your physician or your healthcare clinician. Yes.
Okay, we'll take our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk about whether or not some people are more predisposed to having or getting diabetes than others are. I'll be right back.
The Labor Department, in collaboration with the Statistical Office, is conducting a job openings and labor turnover survey. This survey will provide indicators on the labor demand side of the labor market. This survey will provide beneficial information for the educational sector, the business community, employers, and the state. The Chamber of Industry and Commerce fully endorsed this survey and is appealing to the business community to participate in this very important exercise.
Let's see what we find. For more information, check the Labor Department website at www.dol.gov.vc or contact 457-1789. That's 457-1789.
Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the lotto jackpot. There's Combo 6, where you purchase 6 numbers for only $12. Match any 5 of the 6 lotto numbers and hit the jackpot. How about Combo 7? That's a purchase of 7 lotto numbers for $42. Match any 5 of the 7 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3, Combo 8, and Combo 9 lotto plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Welcome back. Doc, quick question. Who gets type 1 diabetes and who gets type 2?
There are a number of risk factors for diabetes. Some are what we call non-modifiable. That's related to age, your gender, genetics, and then some that are modifiable. Now, type 1 diabetics, there is a strong relationship to the genetic makeup. But typically too, there is going to be some history of some childhood infection, right? A viral infection, and so that could certainly affect the pancreas. And there are a number of these type of things. With type 2 diabetes, this is something that the person may actually have some genetic risk factors, some family history of this that predisposes them to it a little later in life. But it is typically going to be certain modifiable things, such as becoming overweight, that they might well be able to have reduced. So becoming overweight, inactivity, and certainly the diet. Now, they've also found that persons who may have had something called gestational diabetes during pregnancy, the sugar may have just gone up. It's not everybody who has gestational diabetes during a pregnancy, the sugar levels gone up, will eventually develop diabetes, but a high percentage of them will do. And then there's something called polycystic ovary syndrome, of course, in females, whereby it's a certain condition that's associated with a little hair under the chin, inability to have children, amenorrhea, not actually having periods, as well as cysts in the kidneys. And as a result, one of the conditions associated is diabetes at some stage in life. Putting all these factors together, type 2 diabetes is really the big thing we are seeing here in St. Vincent. There are cases of type 1, but type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset a long time ago. We no longer use that because young people are developing type 2 diabetes in their teens as well.
Yes.
And it's to do with predominantly the diet and the type of foods or the lack of type of foods that people have been eating that seems to be predisposing now today a lot of people to type 2 diabetes.
Can a child be born with diabetes?
Yes. A child can be born with a type 1 diabetes. Unlike to be born with type 2, but younger and younger persons are developing type 2. There is a bush tea that people used to drink. I got to say, I'm not going to say the country where it comes from, but there's a bush tea that used to cause inflammation of the pancreas. And that can wipe out the cells that also produce insulin. And as I said, other autoimmune diseases where your body develops antibodies and start to attack your pancreas, attack the cells and destroy them. That's how type 1 diabetes develops. But type 2, let me go back again. A lot of reasons, but the big reason is going to be obesity, as well as inactivity, and more so the type of diet that the person has been eating, or the fact that they have not been eating the right type of food.
So there are certain symptoms which you can relate to diabetes, but can you be diabetic without symptoms and therefore not know?
When you look at persons, and that's why we are saying that you have to look at yourself. You must know when something is going on, but for whatever reason, people become lackadaisical for a better word. Now you might be there and a health center is right in your community, and you're not utilizing it to go for an annual checkup, to make sure that your number is right, to make sure that your kidney is functioning properly, your liver is okay, your heart is okay. So therefore, you will maybe in the pre-diabetic as well as you're already a full-blown diabetes, and you're not aware because you're not checking up your health. Your health is a shared responsibility, and you need to take care of yourself in order for you to find out these things easily. So even though you have signs and symptoms, they pass over your head without you even acknowledging them, unless they become very obvious. Like a male might be going to the bathroom several times in less than an hour. They become very hungry and they will eat a lot of things. And then you may find that, and still it doesn't tickle the mind to say, boy, I really need to go and check out to see really what is happening to me. You know, it may take them to get an injury. They may get a cut, and now when they end up in the emergency and they run certain blood tests, there goes. Your blood sugar is over the normal range. So, yes, there may not be symptoms because you're not aware, you don't know the symptoms. Let's say you don't know the symptoms, so you will not be able to identify and to know that, yes, I may be a diabetic, even though the symptoms are right there.
Okay, how is a diagnosis made?
Well, I think I want to follow on from what was said there. A diagnosis is made really by you engaging the health personnel. You could probably do it on your own, but it's by you really going to a clinic, going to a doctor and so on. And I must say, at here in St. Vincent, we have a big problem. Men just ain't going to the doctor. Men in particular, I don't know what it is. They're afraid. I mean, Teresa, I'm an ugly man, but I'm not so ugly. So you can't say you will go to a doctor and so forth, because, you know what I mean? The point is that men just seem to hate going to the doctors, and that's why we're having all sorts of the prostate cancer and so forth. But this is also true maybe for some women too. But the first thing is engaging the now, what we want to do is to do not just your blood sugar, but we want to check your pressure. We want to also check your pulse. We want to check to see what is your weight and the circumference of your belly, because that will help us to tell us whether you are overweight or you are obese. And further to that, we also want to then do a series of blood sugar tests. The first is we want to prick your finger early in the morning before you've eaten. We call it a fasting blood sugar. And that tells us to some degree if, having not eaten overnight, your blood sugar level should be down to normal. And I said there are different scales being used. Some scales it should be between 80 and 120 on the American scale. On the British and I say Caribbean scale, it goes with millimoles. It must be less than about 5 millimoles. Now if it falls, the blood sugar starts to fall between 5 and 6 roughly, we say you may be pre-diabetic. And if it's above 6, therefore, we make the diagnosis of diabetes. That's one way of making that. But we don't just rely on the simple blood sugar. We usually like to do some other tests, such as the hemoglobin A1C. Now, I want you to realize sugar is sticky. Sugar is sticky. So you know your red blood cells in your blood? The sugar sticks to it. And if your sugar level gets higher and higher and higher, we can measure the amount of sugar that is stuck to the red blood cells, called the hemoglobin A1C. And that tells us if for the last 3 months or 6 months, you have been running very high blood sugar. So the hemoglobin A1C is very important, you know? And then there's some other tests that we could take. We could actually give you a drink, some glucose to drink,
test,
and actually check your blood sugar every hour after and see if the sugar level rises and falls back down to normal. But I want to add, there's some other tests as well we need to know. We need to know about your cholesterol. And we need to know about your lipids, about your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol. There were some studies done here the other day that actually showed that a lot of women had a low good cholesterol level. Some study done in 2015. But all these things, these series of tests, not just one test, taking the blood sugar, taking the hemoglobin A1C, taking the lipid profile, and checking the circumference and your blood pressure, we're able to get a global picture of what's going on and to be able to make a diagnosis of diabetes and be able to tell you exactly if it is mild, if it is pre-diabetes, if it is mildly high, if it's severely high, or if it's something that should be treated and going to hospital to be treated and so.
Okay, we'll take a second break. When we come back, we want to talk about how to care for oneself once you've been diagnosed. Back in just a moment.
I am Dr. Gerald Thompson, an infectious disease specialist. I'm inviting you every week to join our program, Healthy Choices, Healthy Actions, a health program that you need to see.
Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the lotto jackpot. There's Combo 6, where you purchase 6 numbers for only $12. Match any 5 of the 6 lotto numbers and hit the jackpot. How about Combo 7? That's a purchase of 7 lotto numbers for $42. Match any 5 of the 7 numbers and you will win the jackpot. There are also Combo 3, Combo 8, and Combo 9 lotto plays. Visit the NLA headquarters in Pauls Avenue or WhatsApp 495-6886 for more details. Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Welcome back, Doc. Before we talk about caring for yourself after being diagnosed with diabetes, I wanted to talk a little bit about family history and diabetes and how much does family history factor into who gets and who does not get diabetes.
Let me say that family history is a factor, and there's no doubt that there are genetic predispositions to diabetes. But being from a family with a family history does not mean
that you will get it.
You are going to develop it.
That's right.
We now place more emphasis on your own individual profile and what you're doing. In other words, if your family members have a family predisposition, a genetic predisposition, and they've been eating the wrong foods, they've been obese, and all those sort of things, they will develop diabetes. And you, if you do the same, you develop diabetes too. You could break that trend.
That's right.
You could break that mold. You know what I mean? And that is the critical thing. Let me say that diabetes, I want you to understand, when that blood sugar starts to rise in your blood and make your blood thicker and more syrupy, I want you to understand what it does to the different organs of your body. First of all, consider the very small, tiny blood vessels. Because diabetes is what we call small blood vessel disease. So think about the organs of your body that have very small, tiny blood vessels. your eyes, your heart, your kidneys. For men, the penis, the blood going down into your toes, the extremities, and of course your brain. And these are some of the organs that are going to be affected. And depending on how long you have been having this high sugar or ignoring it, and I say many men and many women are diagnosed for about 4 or 5 years into their diabetes, until, as was mentioned, they become fatigued, or they're losing weight, or they pass out, or they start having double vision or blurred vision and things like that. But the important thing is that when it is diagnosed, things have gone to some degree. And we look at, if you've had diabetes for 5 years, if you've had diabetes for 10 years, and if you've had diabetes for 20 years. Because if your diabetes has been poorly controlled for those lengths of time, it determines really what is going to be wrong with you, which organs are going to be damaged, and that will guide as regards the targeted treatment that must be then put in place. Because if your eyes, if the blood vessels inside your eyes are really damaged, you're going to develop things like glaucoma, and you're going to develop a shrinkage of the vision. You're going to start seeing even where the back of the eye, the retina just peels off and so forth. But those blood vessels start to develop all kind of problems. Even new blood vessels start to develop. Then in terms of your heart, I want you to consider that your heart is an important organ. And if the blood sugar is blocking up those blood vessels, making them narrow, that means blood can't get through, the oxygen and nutrients can't get through. But one organ that really suffers is the kidneys. And the kidneys can't handle, all this blood sugar. The kidneys can't handle it. So there are all kind of problems that develop in the kidneys. Eventually the kidneys start to get scarred over by all this syrupy, caustic, sugary blood. And of course for men, I gotta say this, the ability to have, an erection, that's lost. And then the tiny blood vessels down to the toes. You have some hair on the toes. Yeah, those hair cancer, because the blood vessels go to those, small blood vessels go to those hair follicles. And so you lose those. And then the nerves in your feet, the blood vessels go to your feet too. If those are blocked, you then lose some of the sensation in your feet. Such that if you have a stone inside your shoe, a pebble, you don't feel it. And that pebble start to bore a hole in the back bottom of your feet and start to get so there are many, many conditions that develop depending on which part of the body. And people will come in, a male will come in and say, well, I have some chest pain, but I also have problems with an erection. What could I do? And then you do a blood sugar test and so forth, and his sugar's been running high and probably running high for a long time. And so, in answer to your question, this is the real core part of the problem, that persons have an opportunity to delay or even stop or prevent diabetes from progressing. And it isn't so much about the family history that's going to make it move along. It's about what you as the individual do. Yes. And the first thing is making a diagnosis, and then listening to your nurse, listening to your doctor to make sure that you can keep this thing in place so that you can enjoy the niceties of life. You know what I mean? If I could put it that way.
Okay, Chris, I know that this is probably your pet area. What are some of the things that we can do once you've been diagnosed to take care of yourself, take care of those organs, those limbs, and prolong probably some inevitable stuff or damage.
All right. So my area of expertise is dealing with the feet. And I always speak prevention. Because as a diabetic, you know that diabetes need constant caring for. It's like a baby. The moment you slip up is the moment something is going to happen to you. So I always tell the clients, you now become a diabetic, you're now looking at the holistic care of you, where you will need to see your physician to have an annual checkup. You look at your eye, you will need to see the eye doctor. You will need to see the dental surgeon, because yes, your teeth, your mouth comes into play as a diabetic. So therefore, whatever appointments you receive, you need to keep your appointments. And if anything comes up, emergency before your appointment even comes, you need to go forward and get it sorted out. So I'm looking at the feet, as Mr. Tamsu mentioned earlier on about the blood vessels and, endings, because if your blood sugar, we go right back again, if your blood sugar is not controlled, if it is just jumping up and down and across and in the middle, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. A lot of problems. And what I am seeing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is persons as young as in their 30s is having foot problem, where they comes in and they lose a toe, and from a toe they may lose all the toes, and we call that chance metatarsal amputation. You may also lose your leg, which it can either be below leg or above knee amputation. So these things are very, very important that the diabetic pay special attention. Now you look at your feet, you need to examine your feet daily. When you wake up on mornings, you examine your feet, because things that you may not have left there when you went to bed, you can find it there in the morning, and you move immediately. Don't stay at home and want to do your own thing and say, oh, I have good flesh, and this little bruise will heal up. No. You stay at home and you do your own thing. By the time you get to the health center is when things are getting out of control. And then you showed up and you expect a miracle. A miracle cannot perform. When you get a bruise, you examine your feet, you find a cut, you find a bruise, you find a bleb, you move immediately. And I've been seeing frequently a lot of nail chokes. Why? Because persons are not wearing appropriate shoe. Nails all about the place, and it might be in the night and you doesn't have on a proper shoe, or you are barefoot. We are saying no barefoot for diabetics. You should have on shoes in the house or outdoor. You must have on appropriate shoe. You go to the beach, you must have on a beach shoe, because the hot sun can scorch the sole of your feet. Things can choke you on the sand, in the beach. So we are advocating that you use appropriate shoe. Now people are telling you to soak your feet. You don't soak your feet. Some people use Epsom salt and all kind of salt and soak in the feet as a diabetic. Why do you want to soak your feet? Your sebaceous gland already been destroyed by your high glucose content. So there is no oil coming to the surface of your skin, so you have dry skin, easily to crack. And if your skin is easy to crack, there is a sore again. And diabetics have slow healing. So therefore, we are saying to you that you need to pay special attention to your feet as a diabetic. What do I can't get the appropriate shoe. If you ask question, you will be guided accordingly. So I'm saying that you can even use mirror, to look on the bottom of your feet. So you put the mirror like this and you look into the mirror and you can see if there are any changes in color, if there are any bruises, any cut under your feet, and you can get them treated, because in every health district there are community, there are nurses there. So you need to access, because as the team says, education for tomorrow. And that's why we are here, to heighten the awareness, not to become complacent, but to come aware and to take care, constant care of yourself, your feet, mainly, that's my main point.
Okay, we'll take a final break. When we come back, we'll talk about some tips on how to manage blood sugar and also a little bit about the work of the Diabetic and Hypertensive Association. Back in just a minute.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. Early reading is the key, so help them read, learn, grow. Let's show them how much fun it is to read, learn, grow. So parents, you play a part.
First and foremost, reading from so young is advantageous. Link with the teachers, working hand in hand is a must. Just 10 minutes of your child reading to you is a plus. Get fun books, make reading priority. When children read, they are able to learn, and the more they learn, the more they grow. So parents help the kids read, learn, grow. Reading is fun, kids have to know.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play a part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to www.oecs.org/ELP.
Welcome back. Doc, you know, there are also a lot of myths associated with this disease. One of them being that excessive sugar causes diabetes. Myth or fact?
Well, boy, I tell you something. Let me say, first of all, there are a number of things we know that induce diabetes. For one, inactivity. You sitting down, the age of television. Way back in the 60s, people didn't have so much television. The age of television, now computers and so forth, people are sedentary, sitting down on a couch, you know? And then the development of obesity. And I'm not talking about just obesity in your bottom, I'm talking about what we call abdominal obesity, visceral obesity, where the fat is being deposited in the back of your belly. But this is all about diet. And sugar, let me say this carefully. Sugar is necessary and carbohydrate is necessary to give you energy, the right amount. The problem we've been having is the amount of added sugar to the foods. Added sugar. The manufacturers and everybody have been adding more sugar because it seems to taste better, and some people like it like that. So it's sweetened more, and adding sugar isn't. And then I want to mention to you another type of artificial sugar called high fructose corn syrup. This is the big thing ever since the 80s, and I think it's been responsible for a lot of the emergence and growth of diabetes. I wish I was able to put this up close. This is a label on a package. Everybody, we want you to read it.
Yes.
We want you to read it to see how much sugar is there and whether there is high fructose corn syrup. You're going to find that in your Oreo cookies, in your peanut butter. You're going to find it in some Frosties. You're going to find it in your French, your Russian, your Italian seasoning. You're going to find it in a lot of your tomato ketchup and your barbecue sauce. But the thing is that men, you're only supposed to have 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. Women, 6. Do you know a can of Coca-Cola already has 9? A can of Coca-Cola already has 9. A glass of orange juice sweetened has 4.5 already. You find that a bar chocolate, milk chocolate, not the dark chocolate. The milk chocolate has 70 spoons in already. A blueberry muffin, and a lot of those cakes and so forth around the place, 6.5. So that's just one. So that if you have 2-3 blueberry muffins, or if you have two cans of Coke, you're already up to 18. That's twice the amount. And that sugar is going to get into your body. Now, the high fructose corn syrup is different. It's metabolized in a different way. And it isn't metabolized the same way glucose. I'm saying it's deadly, causes a host of the problem. One of the big, please read the thing. So what I love drinking today is water. Old Vincentian water. If it's spa water from Belair or from Falls of Belen, near to Belen, fine. But water is great. Exercise. And the big thing today is fiber. Fiber. If you could eat a lot more fiber in your diet, what we call soluble fiber, it's going to stop the absorption of some of the sugar. Those are the tips that I want to make, and maybe I know that there are going to be some more coming from my guest there.
All right. Well, you mentioned practically, what I had in mind, but my concern today is the Coca-Cola has taken over St. Vincent, which is bad. That is too much sugar in our system. And yes, we mentioned earlier on, if my family, my mom is a diabetic, I can prevent it. I can prevent myself from becoming a diabetic. But if I am eating poorly, my diet is poor, I am consuming a lot of sugar, over excessive that my body is supposed to contain, then I am predisposing myself for diabetes. Hence, it's going to cause, a lot on the healthcare in St. Vincent, even on when it comes to finance the health system, to bring in certain drugs and all of this, the insulin, the tablets and everything. But if we as an individual take the care in our own hand, because diabetes is a self-care management, and we are saying prevention. People, we are saying prevention. And if you can prevent it, it will take the burden off the country. It will take some of the burden off the country, some of the burden off yourself, some of the burden on your family members, because when you become diabetic and you lose a limb, it puts a lot of strain on family members. It slows down productivity in our country. Now tell me, how are you expect to move on in life? You may be the breadwinner. You may be the husband in a home, and you have lost a limb, and now you cannot produce for your home. What is going to happen? So I'm encouraging you to think seriously on prevention. Don't become another victim of diabetes when you can avoid it. Thank you.
I see a bottle of Coca-Cola up on the screen. I hope people not taking that we promoted Coca-Cola. We're saying no, don't take it. Please.
Too much sugar.
Everybody don't get the wrong impression there. We may be giving some subliminal messages and so forth, but I know it's trying to give the chart to show people what's really inside it. I mean, you talk about losing limbs. What about losing your sight? What about your kidneys going bad where you just can't? What about being a young person and you could no longer have the type of relationship you may have with your mate?
That's right.
And what about infections? Because, the sugar, when your sugar level gets high, you know what happens to your white blood cells? Help to fight infection? They get drunk. They get drunk by the sugar. The sugar gets kind of turned into alcohol inside them, and they get drunk, and they can't fight off the infections. That's the problem. I'm hoping in St. Vincent today that we can do something really strong and deliberate about diabetes, as well as high blood pressure, about cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. We really can do something to help reduce the loss of lives, as well as a lot of people literally pass away long before they die from their loss of limbs, loss of sight, loss of kidney function, having a heart attack. And I am really hoping that
There'll be a turnaround.
Today, tomorrow, everybody makes a thing. I go into the doctor, I go into the clinic, I go and check, and at least every year, check again to make sure that you pick this up early. But more importantly, prevention is better than cure. And by changing the diet, I think that, when I take the diet, there's so much, Teresa, I gotta say this, there's so much greens and so forth that people could be taking to help also reduce the effect of but fiber is going to be one of the big, soluble fiber is one of the big things. And cutting out all that added sugar and high fructose corn syrup as a secret form of sugar in the food. Look for it, avoid it. It could help save your life.
Wow. I don't think there's a better note on which we can end this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. I hope somebody at least learned one thing this evening. I want to thank you, as usual, Dr. Thompson, for always being ready and willing to share all the medical information, whatever information you're called upon to share with us. Thank you also to Madam Crease for consenting to be on the program and helping to educate the populace about diabetes. Good luck also to the work of your organization, the Diabetic and Hypertensive Association. I'll probably check in and see how I can help in whatever way I can and offer my services one way or the other. Thank you again, both of you. As you know, I'm a bit off island today, but soon come. Thank you. Have a good evening. That's our program for today. So glad you could join us. Join us again next week, Wednesday, same time, for another edition of Roundtable Talk. Good evening.
I am Dr. Gerald Thompson, an infectious disease specialist. I'm inviting you every week to join our program, Healthy Choices, Healthy Actions, a health program that you need to see.
Thinking of winning the lotto jackpot? Well, there is an easy way. Combo Play. Choose 4 numbers from 1 to 36. That's a combo 4 at a cost of $64. Match any 4 of the 5 numbers and win the lotto jackpot.